Right, I should be live apparently, according to YouTube. How's everyone doing? So, today we're going to be talking about, as you can see from the title of the stream, the right wing revolutionary spirit. And this isn't exactly going to be used in a way that's a positive to describe the right wing, actually. This is going to be a look at something that I think more of us should really think about. I don't see really any discussion of this at all. And I think it's a good thing to discuss it. And I'll get into what it is in a second. If you see me looking down here, I'm actually reading the stream, the stream responses as they come in. So if you want to contribute to this discussion, of course you can't do this if this is just a recording. But if you're live, if you're with me live now, you can respond and chip in, and I'll do my best to respond because I can imagine a lot of people are going to have an issue with this because it's going to go at what I imagine is the core of a lot of people's being. Because I mean, I've known people personally that have suffered from this pretty intensely, and this is something that is probably close to a lot of people's hearts. But I think it's necessary that it's mentioned. And so, as we get into this, wow, we've got 10 viewers already. That's great. I want to talk about what I mean specifically by this revolutionary spirit. I was reading Zero H.P. Lovecraft actually today, and he has done an article on something called the revolutionary spirit of 2016, relating to Donald Trump. And I haven't linked this article because it's really not that related to what I'm going to discuss here. But it certainly manifests some of the symptoms that I'm going to describe of this right-wing revolutionary spirit which has emerged over the last, I wouldn't say 8 years. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? 8 years, bloody hell. But really, I mean, I felt it since before Gamergate. So that would be, I mean, that must have been like 2013. So call it over 10 years. To more or less an extent. It started in 2013. So, of course, there are many issues, and I think it's correct to acknowledge that any sort of solution of the problems that the right wing typically suffers, or I'm talking about the genuine right wing. I'm not talking so much about conservatives in the in the corporate sense, in the Republican Party sense of the term. I'm referring much more to those who are more dissident here. I mean, like, a lot of these things are going to just straight up require a really serious cultural change. So, of course, we don't need to discuss these in any great depth. But, the social issues, the alphabet issue, the abortion epidemic, the pushing of mass immigration into Western countries, and fears around the ethnic replacement of the native people there. And this also... And I think this is one of the places where this becomes really, really important. This also manifests within the church itself. You often have issues of heretical priests preaching heretical things, lack of regard for liturgy properly, extremely poorly catechized people who are really just leftists, but they come to mass on Sunday. And by leftists, I mean like progressive types. I don't mean classical liberals. Although I think that the church tends in a much more normie right-wing direction when it comes to almost everybody in it, including even the more left-wing priests. This still has an effect, and it's still got it's still obviously present. And there's a lot of people who react to this, and I think that's one of the really major problems with it. I can't actually see Charlie. Oh wait, no, it's because you've both got similar profile pictures. I was getting George Washington and Charlie Adams mixed up. Can right wingers even have revolutions? Normally they're counter-revolution. In this case, I'm talking about the instinct within the right to completely overthrow the current system, and I don't mean purely in in a political sense. I mean totally socially reform the entire society. So this might be comparable to something like maybe the social changes that... I mean, I don't actually know to what extent the Iranian Revolution actually had social change in Iran, because you see pictures of westernized women in Iran, but I don't know how far that actually changed the majority of the society and whether this was just like a very small minority in the major cities. But something that evokes that kind of memory, the idea that we can just take, maybe the assumptions of the French Revolution and completely obliterate them, culturally and politically. So, of course, these things are these goals in themselves aren't bad, but the disposition that's associated with them, I think, is really problematic, which is what I'm going to talk about. And I use a very left-wing kind of newspeak term, but I really mean, I think that it's actually the way that people approach this problem, it seems, based on what I see through Twitter and what I see online and just the entire general background of the right, even including some of the normie conservatives, is quite troubling. Brian Holdsworth has something like that. We'll create our own colleges, producing our own institutions. Yeah, that's one thing. But maybe we could even have one child off every 9 months. Bloody hell. Okay, so this is probably going to go in a direction that I don't think that the people in the chat are actually going to assume, because I'm going to talk about the what I think is the incorrect approach and some of the things that I observe with the right. And of course, I've been very critical of the right on this channel. I don't know if I've received any response outside of comments to my criticisms. I don't even know if I'm having an impact, because to be honest, I kind of disappeared off the face of the earth, and so obviously I lost a lot of my ability to get attention. But it would be nice to actually hear these things countenanced in more than a comment section, because I think they're quite dangerous. Because the problem that all of this evokes, and I know people very, very close to me that have had their lives, really seriously damaged by the mentality that comes around this sort of this attitude towards reality. Perhaps not as a direct result of desiring the things I've just mentioned, but certainly as a result of the culture around it. Not so much the trad end, but more on the sort of the TRS kind of end of things. And it obliterates them, right? It makes people get habituated into a circle of a cycle of anger and despair. And I think that a lot of the people in the audience have experienced that for many years now. And you look at the situation as it stands, and I understand why somebody would despair, but I don't think it's a good thing. And allow me to elaborate some of the signs I think that this is actually a much more prevalent mindset than we're willing to admit. So the first thing, and I've even noticed this. I noticed this actually even in the what was it called? The Consecration to St. Joseph book by it was a priest of I can't remember his name. It was a priest from the US. Like, there is always this looming presence of the left in everything. There's always this assumption that they're always present, even in things like, or at least in this case, that aren't actually directly related, except insofar as they oppose the values that are preached by St. Joseph. So it makes some sense to mention them, but it's kind of infiltrating even into the spiritual aspects of people's lives. And I mean, I suppose this is an even more widespread phenomenon when you remember that Evola is quite an influential figure in these circles. It penetrates everything, even the very depths of people's souls, in this section of the internet. I mean, and this is before we get into the Twitter accounts that seem to be begging almost for people's indignation, for people's anger. You see these accounts where people just post all of these accounts of horrible things happening. These horrible things that are happening across the world that hit on these particular values that we've expressed here. And they will often say, you see them in the tweets, and these are from prominent people in this movement. They will deliberately try and tease out that anger. And you notice it in their tweets. They seem to think that this anger is somehow going to make them more powerful. And somehow like this anger is going to like cause something to happen. And I think it's not that great. And you even, I mean, that's the understatement of the century. I think it's actually crippling a lot of people, because even if there's some sort of political movement against these things, you're going to end up with people who are habituated into what I'll talk about later, and certainly into things that aren't good. So you also see this discussion of immoral tactics to deal with these problems. So, for example, the big one that I can think of that's really prominent, American Renaissance, talking about paying people of I think it was of lower IQ, not receiving enough detail. Okay, smooth sailing. Yeah, you see like American Renaissance discussing castrating black people and stuff like that. You'll see people unironically supporting abortion because it reduces the the birth rates of people who have migrated into the country. That is murder. That is murdering the children, as if we are Pharaoh and the Egyptians, right? And like this is a representative of another problem. I actually saw this in my comment section. I've been arguing with someone who seems convinced that a solution to the demographic problem in the West is just allowing people to fornicate, so that there can be a mass number of births, and this is somehow going to change the situation. Now, never mind the fact that you're giving birth to tons of children in broken homes, and you're going to end up with people who are without potentially generational wealth because of the fornication, and therefore they're at a massive disadvantage. Besides the the lack of virtue that they're likely to be growing up around, single mothers and things like that, if it's out of fornication, right? Like that. Like, it's the reason I mention this individual one is it's sort of, I mean, I figure it's kind of emblematic, not of that particular argument, but it's a particularly manifest example of the levels that people are willing to go to actually defeat their enemy, which indicates to me an inordinateness of anger. So I'm just going to go through the comments section very quickly, because I've seen someone tagged me here. No, that's a bad idea. We need to evangelize institutions, not bad. Okay, they're discussing institutions. Any man who shirks his responsibilities to his wife will be shamed in the community. Well, I mean, like, we're all talking about this hypothetical community, but to be honest, I think that given how people are, it's very difficult to produce at least meaningful community. At least the way they seem to be, right? I mean, to be fair, a good fruit can't a bad tree can't produce good fruit, right? And I see a lot of anger in the comment sections. I see a lot of anger on not so much on Twitter, on Discord, and anger is something that destroys people. And I see it everywhere. I see it in religious communities as well. Like, there are people out there who are so angry about the progressive issues that they see in the West that they're willing to break from the church over it. And I don't like that, right? Like, no one likes to see the clown masses, right? No one likes to see liberals preaching, female ordination, right? But this isn't representative of what goes on. These things happen, but they're not like massive things. And you've had abuses in the past, granted different abuses. You even had moral laxists in the 17th century. Yet that doesn't provide us a reason to break from the church, and yet many people, I think, are. People see the church and they see the people who are preaching in it, and they see these leftists and they think it's cringe because they're conditioned, as someone, at least a couple people that I know very close to me are, to just disconnect because, well, it's cringe. It's these leftists, right? And this is to the if they know it's true, this is to the condemnation of their own souls. And it's sad. And this is a really serious problem. And a lot of people in the online right just outright encourage it. They'll craft their tweets in the way that's supposed to like jut into your soul and wriggle you about so that you just feel the most strong anger that is possible. And all this does is anger people. And if people want to know, well, what are the consequences of this anger? Why am I talking about this? Well, let's have a look at St. Thomas Aquinas, who talks about the results of anger. So these are the 6 daughters of anger, according to St. Thomas. I'm going to be reading this from the other screen. Actually, I'll probably just drag across here so I can keep reading your comments as I go. So he answers this in Article 7 of the 158th question of the Secunda Secundae Partis. That is the second part of the second part. So he says, well, of course there are anger can be really sinful, right? And it certainly has results that are right. And so he enumerates these 6 daughters, that is 6 results from anger. And since people are being habituated into this anger and they consider the leftist and the progressive under this auspice, they are, because of their habituation. This isn't to say that all anger is unjust, by the way. It's more that I think that it's just very disproportionate, because if you look at the prophets, they had their entire country destroyed, Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and you don't see anything like the anger from them that you do out of people whose countries haven't been destroyed, whose countries still have an ethnic majority, but nonetheless they see a threat. And so he says thus: anger may be considered in 3 ways. First, as consisting in thought, and thus two vices arise from anger. One on the part of the person with whom the man is angry, and whom he deems unworthy, indignum in Latin, of acting thus towards him. This is called indignation. So, person is acting against you in a way that you don't think is right, with respect to you. Where is it? He deems unworthy of acting thus towards him. Well, another person deems unworthy of acting thus towards him. Yeah, okay. Yeah. The other vice is on the part of the man himself, insofar as he devises various means of vengeance, and with such like thoughts fills his mind, according to Job chapter 15 verse 2. Will a wise man ... fill his stomach with burning heat? And thus we have the swelling of the mind. This is, when you're thinking about like taking revenge on a certain group of people, and I think we all know what that feels like. Secondly, anger may be considered as expressed in words, and thus a twofold disorder arises from anger. One is when a man manifests his anger in his manner of speech, as stated above, which is in an article above, so that's Article 5. Of a man who says to his brother, Raca, as you recall from the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew. And this refers to clamour, which denotes disorderly and confused speech. So, getting angry at people and insulting them. Actually, no, this comes later on, that's something else. The other disorder is when a man breaks into injurious words, and if these be against God, it is blasphemy. If against one's neighbour, it is contumely. Thirdly, anger may be considered as proceeding to deeds, and thus anger gives rise to quarrels, by which are understood all manners of injuries inflicted on one's neighbour through anger. These things result from anger, and they are vices. And not only that, I also think, regardless of what St. Thomas has said, and by all means, I'm not the Pope. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. That if we are continually looking at Twitter and continually looking at these people trying to stir us up, and I'm not saying that the concerns aren't legitimate, but we're going to habituate ourselves further into anger about certain things, be it about clown mass, be it about abortion, be it about all manner of different things which are evil. And this will lead us to become disproportionately angry at these things. And this disproportionate anger is actually venially sinful, which means that it predisposes us towards mortal sin. And the last thing we want is to be, if we want to live, first of all, good lives, which should be our real aim. Like, I think the reason we exist is to be saved, right? If we want to live good lives, and second of all, if we want to be effective, we need to have a good control of our emotions, and simply going through Twitter and seeing, this is what they want to do to your children constantly, that doesn't help us. That just makes us angry, and it makes us bitter. And this is before we get into the despair associated with it and the fear, because these people who are doing this, at least from our perspective, seem to have a hell of a lot more power than we do. And so I don't think that this is good, and I think that this should be actively fought against. Like, for example, how many times do I need to go through Twitter to know that there are drag queens in front of children? How many times do I have to go through Twitter to see that, there is an immigrant crime problem, right? Everyone knows this. How many times do you need to, see the clown mass on video to know that there are priests in the Novus Ordo who are conducting things in an improper way, at the very least? And that is when they're not heretics. Of course, these things all exist. And yet, we look at the fall of Judah in the 6th century. We read the prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And as I said, and even Daniel, we don't see the anger being expressed by these people that fits what we're seeing here. And this was when they were having the temple. The temple was destroyed. Right? They had every reason to be angry at the Babylonians, and they weren't. They just kept going, and they did what God told them to do. They weren't controlled by this anger. And they were suffering something that is not that different from what we're suffering. And so I ask, why should we? Why should we allow ourselves to be enslaved to such anger? And why do people feel it's necessary to even portray such things when we all know what's going on? Wouldn't it be a whole lot better to approach this problem acknowledging that it's evil and having a proportionate level of anger to it, which I honestly don't know the mean in this matter, or at least attempting to be, and then try to actually find a solution without the swelling of the mind, especially, without our thoughts being crowded, which prevents us from acting prudently, because if we have all these thoughts flying around of what we're angry about, it actually interferes with our ability to properly process what's going on in front of us. And that's before we even get into the habituation of anger, which leads us to misjudge situations where somebody says something progressive, right? Someone might say something progressive, but they might just be a completely normal person. And we might misjudge them in that situation and dismiss them when we shouldn't. And so, I really think that there needs to be a solution to this, and the solutions I can think of are praying to be free of it and almsgiving, right? We need to calm down and, of course, get away from these things. There needs to be an active pressure on people to stop posting this kind of stuff, because all it does is make people angry and make people less effective. And so I'll just read the comments section now. This is kind of what I had written. If people have any questions, now's the time to post them. Right, okay, I'm going to try and find the comments that are good. Yes, the right is built out of demoralization campaigns. I mean, it kind of is. I mean, I think that this isn't so much a demoralization campaign. I imagine that a lot of people think that by making people angry, that's somehow going to make people act. Which, yeah, they could. They might act, but why? And this is another thing with the right as well. There's this prizing of action, which no one actually follows out on, follows with, right? And yeah, action is necessary, but why can't we act prudently instead of imprudently? We don't have to be act all the time. We have to think about things and stop and consider what we're doing before we do it, because we can actually, really hurt ourselves if we don't think. I call it hate fever. Maybe that is a... Oh, bloody hell. Has my internet died? Oh, am I back? Yeah, I just saw no data coming through. I don't know if I missed anything. Did you lose me for a second there? Because I just saw no data on my end, and I was wondering if you missed anything. If a man and a woman both marry at the age of 18, they will have a child every 9 months until the woman reaches menopause. No, that's not quite how it works, actually, George, because it turns out that the breast milk actually suppresses a woman's ability to conceive. So it's not quite like that. And, women need time to recover from these sorts of things. You can't just, how do I describe this? It's a lot more complicated than just that, I'll say that. Yeah, I mean, being numerically overwhelmed, I don't think that the outnumbering thing really works. At least it doesn't in the Gulf states, for example, where the UAE, where the native Emiratis are very much outnumbered by especially Indians and Pakistanis, and yet they still retain quite a lot of power. So I don't think that numbers necessarily make a difference. It's what the culture does with those numbers. Yeah, that's what Germany did at Hitler Youth marches and giving babies older parents, stop making an idle out of birth rates. Yeah, I think that's true. LLS talks a lot about how to create community cohesion so you can depend on each other quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of talk about this basket weaving stuff, but I don't know the quality of the people involved with this, right? Because if these people are predominantly interested in politics and not in religion, there's no reason to assume that they've done good reading into proper habits. And because they haven't done this proper reading into habits and into holiness and stuff like this, then how can you know that the people you're meeting are actually worth meeting? I could be meeting somebody who's exceedingly proud and be dragged down by that. Or, I could bring my family into danger because, anybody who has a political interest could be there. I'd much rather associate with people who are genuinely religious, pursuing maybe a political goal in the secondary sense. Especially considering I don't think there really is a political goal to be achieved apart from a religious one at the moment because we're so out of whack. Many people do it, we all support each other. Well, yeah, I mean, like, all of these things assume a level of virtue that I don't have any evidence exists. Let's see. Oh, okay. Christians who advocate for race worshipping policies like it gives them bonus points to heaven is bizarre. Well, they need a better paying job, or then it absolutely could work. Oh wait, no, this is two different people. Never mind. Ignore me. Ignore me. I think you need to cooperate with leftists and rightists when they are right at addressing issues like porn, objectification, maternity leave, etc. Yeah, you see, like, I can't imagine a conservative politician ever opposing payday loans. Right, that's something that should be obliterated. I can see a leftist doing it though. Yeah, exactly. Being so angry that you forget that humans are made in the image and likeness of God is a problem. Yeah, and I think this is more widespread than people are willing to admit. I get what you're saying, but a lot of normies aren't aware of these things happening, so it would be good to inform them. Yeah, but you don't. Well, I mean, this has to be assessed on a person by person basis, right? You can't just have accounts where they're pumping out like endless videos of the same crimes all the time, right? That's just going to make people angry. What needs to be done is there needs to be a consideration of the person, and they need to realize that we're not all evil. And I mean, like, if everyone's always like hating the other side, then that's very hard to do, because that is evil. Hating your neighbor is evil. That doesn't mean that we should help them, but it does mean that we need to consider what is best for them. Passing legislation like Texas Pornhub has done more to protect children than half the people on the Whatever podcast arguing the e-girls. Well, I mean, I don't like the Whatever podcast just because the way the women dress on there. I actually can't look at the screen. Like, the way the women dress, I would fall into mortal sin. Just the way the women are dressed on there. The rightists have a reformist spirit. Is that a problem? Well, not per se. If you listen to the rest of the stream. I am using live chat, not top chat. Yeah, I'm reading like I'm going in order, so that's why. Books were getting burned. Right wingers. But those Indians and Pakistanis aren't citizens of the Gulf states, and we are. Yeah, that is a fair point. Yeah. What I'm talking about is the Lebensborn program. A lot of the material during the Third Reich was very degenerate, just pro-natalist. Yeah, I mean, like, you hear stories about women from the German Union of Maidens, I think it was called, the Hitler Youth for Girls, getting pregnant at Nuremberg and stuff like that. It wasn't great. LLB is mainly coming from a religious suburban neighborhood where they pray the missal. I don't know what LLS even is. When I talk to normies, they get exactly what's going on in the world. Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, it's you see a lot of people are. I mean, like Zero HP Lovecraft made this point. Like a lot of people don't like what they're seeing with the transgender stuff and the genders, but they don't have any reason to oppose it. Really, they're just disgusted by it, right? Um, that's not sufficient. There needs to be like an actually core philosophical reason why this should be opposed. Not because people who don't understand this will ever grasp that, but because any kind of effective replacement of the current system is going to need some sort of solid basis for it, and not one that's merely consequential, right? Like, if they were to produce a gender transition drug that were genuinely reversible, and not like the one they use at least in the US, where it's just the same drug they use to castrate criminals. Then what would they say then? Well, it's like, well, they can genuinely transition, but does that actually solve the problem? No, it's still wrong. It's just they've managed to avoid like the quote unquote permanent consequences, or at least they say they can. Abortion referendums consistently fail in deep red states like Montana, Kansas, and Kentucky. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Andrew Wilson is doing good, whatever. No, I mean, like the problem with the Whatever podcast, like I said, like they just don't wear the bloody, just they don't wear anything, right? The Whatever podcast is in my opinion disguised advertising for those girls, since a certain number of the viewers will go to look at those girls' accounts. Well, I mean, it's just porn. I mean, if that's actually the case, then that's just advertising pornography, or at least like nude pictures. I don't know who Abigail Shrier is, so I couldn't tell you. Yeah, so I mean that was the main thing I was going to discuss today. Just thinking about um, like a lot of problems I see, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get listened to. It would be nice, but yeah, I haven't seen any indication of that issue. If you guys want to ask me anything else, I'm going to remain on for a bit. I'll just make this like a Q&A stream. If anybody's DM me on Discord as well, I'll just have a quick look. It doesn't seem as if they have. Yeah, OLLB. I don't know about any of these names. Like, I mean, so basically what happened is I left this channel originally in 2020, I think. And I went through a very significant change in my life with the pandemic, a very positive one. Went through a couple channels. I can't remember exactly when they ended. And got married and had a kid. And I've been kind of living a normie life since, really. So I'm very disconnected from all these online worlds. I haven't really even been on Discord for going on probably since I got married. So going on a year and a half now. I've been completely disconnected from all that, and the whole attitude seems to have changed. I'm told that the Discord's gotten a lot more popular, but to be honest, the circles that I'm in, I don't know if I could ever get involved in it again. It's not nearly as fun. Like, largely because the whole environment seems a lot more how do I put it? It's not as relaxed. And I don't know if being involved with it will really be of any benefit to other people. Maybe it would be. I mean, I know of some people that evangelize through there, and they say it's grown significantly since the pandemic. But at the same time, I see the sort of drama that occasionally goes on, and it's like, well, why do I need that, right? Like, what have I to gain from associating with people who are constantly involved in drama? I don't know who Alex Rosen is or Hotets. Lord Patriot little softcore porn. Yeah. Do you have a public Discord? Yes, I do. Shrier is the girl they trot out for normicons to criticise trans/psychotherapy. I'm gonna quickly post a invite link to my Discord. Give me a moment. Yeah, I don't know if I might maybe I'm out of touch. I don't know. I probably am. I've been out of it for a year and a half. I mean, I'm sure people will tell me in the comment section about that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, people have joined. I'll let you fellas in. Right, there you go, mate. And there you go. All right, can be Discord mod while I'm sat here. You see, Discord mods can get married. You had an excuse. You weren't doing a lot of the cringe pseudo-monastic thing a lot of Christians do. Well, I mean, I actually, when I got married, I kind of wanted it to be as close to a monastery as possible, but with marriage. It hasn't quite worked. It hasn't quite worked out that way, to be honest. I mean, I mean, like, I don't know, right? It just seems like there's a lot of bickering and a lot of mucking around and not much being actually done. Maybe it's because one of the things I noticed actually after getting married was that I became a lot more productive all of a sudden, and I don't know if that's because of God's grace, whether it's because I moved out of my family's house, because I'd lived there after university for a bit, doing my jobs, or doing my one job at that point. Or if it's God's grace from the sacrament, but I all of a sudden became a hell of a lot more productive, right? So since I've been married, I've managed to learn Latin to a point where I can read a lot of 17th and 18th century stuff with minimal use of a dictionary, although not perfectly. And I've been developing Greek over the last 6 months since my son was born, and I'm just going through the New Testament now. With a reader's edition, so you can get a lot done. And actually, this reminds me, there was someone who said on a stream that like if you just set aside a year for Latin, like if you can't do that, you're lazy, right? Like if you want to get really really good at really anything, but Latin, I can speak from experience. Like it's going to take a lot. I mean, I think that like it's probably easier. I wouldn't be surprised if it were easier, even though the language is technically harder, to develop a high level of fluency in Russian. I wouldn't be surprised if it's easier to develop that with Russian than it is with Latin, even though Latin is easier, because Latin is largely the interesting stuff in Latin is largely written down, whereas the Russian stuff, you could just sit and watch, whatever Russian television shows or whatever you want, and just by osmosis gain that. With Latin, it's a lot harder. A lot of the content is really, really cringe as well. So, I have like very painful memories of having to sit through a lot of cringe, because it was the most efficient way of developing language skills. Like, because if you don't do this, you're going to be sat a lot reading, and that's not the most efficient way to develop a fluency in it. Christians ignoring reality and turning the faith into a spinning symbols in your head, posturing about being a good person. She was on Bishop Barron's show on EWTN. She used to write for Pathos and used to be a Stoic/deontologist. Being single wastes an insane amount of time. You do your own stuff, talk to girls, blah blah blah. Yeah, like the amount of time, and yeah, I mean, I've got this channel as evidence, right? The amount of time I used to chase women, the amount of time that I went to bars and I tried to talk to women, and I actually don't know to what extent I was successful. And then I just end up meeting a girl completely randomly in, well, I wouldn't call her a girl, she's a woman. Just as you do, and now we're married and we got a kid. Didn't have to waste all that time. I could have developed a lot more skills if I'd just sat down and done it. But to be honest, I wasn't really virtuous enough at that point. And to be honest, a lot of the self-improvement stuff is really terrible and misleading. or at least you can take it in a very misleading way. So, like, for example, if anybody here has read Atomic Habits and you see him talking about, oh, you spend 2 minutes doing something and then rebuild up and build up and build up. I took this actually initially as this means that you can build all manner of different habits all at once, and so I was reading like 6 books at once, and that absolutely crushed me because I was doing all of this context switching. Now, what I think you should probably do is like pick one thing. In fact, like Cornelius a Lapide actually says this in his commentary on the book of Sirach. You pick a single book, and then you just read that, and you continue with that one thing so that you get good at it, right? So if you want to take James Clear's advice and just like pick 2-minute habits, that's not how you get good at something. You pick one thing, you pick one vice to work on, your predominant vice ideally. You pick one book to work on, and then you just work through that until you're done, and then you move on to the next one. And you mine that if that's the point, right? So I'm trying to affect this with what I'm doing. So sometimes I'll work a lot on my career, like I'll build something. Sometimes at the moment I'm reading the Gospels, right, in Greek. I'm thinking I'm going to read Cornelius a Lapide on Proverbs in Latin. This huge commentary. I'm kind of intimidated by it, actually. Probably going to do some more software as well. Everyday right-wing Twitter makes me want to require approval when the bishop make an account having your priest approve every post. I mean, having your priest approve every post is a bit far. I do agree, though. I think that people should be approved by their bishop before they do a lot of... Well, actually, who knows, right? This is a difficult problem. I know that there used to be a system of approvals related to things like this, but I don't actually know how it would work now. This reminds me of who's shockingly not aware of internet figures despite being a YouTube creator. I was having a discussion on maternal mortality rates, and my Italian GF said, in Italy we care about mama. Well, I've heard Italy has like really, really low birth rates, actually. I've chased 0 women, haven't had a genuine conversation with a woman outside of my family for half a decade. My lack of skills development is due to my own procrastination, saying I'll do it tomorrow. Well, I mean... the Proverbs say that a good wife is a gift from the Lord, and I believe this. Just pray for a wife, right? Like you can it sounds like kind of a cringe response to a lot of the PUA types who want to develop skills or something. But really, you only need to be right once, and your skills with women, like chatting up women, like they're not really going to be useful after you're married, like unless your wife dies. So better use your time for other things. It's better to use your time for other things like getting good at your job, or insofar as it's necessary to provide for your family, or getting good at scripture, getting good at the Bible, which everyone should be doing. I was considering doing some streams about getting the basics down for the Bible, but I feel like my wife wouldn't like it because I've got some rather controversial opinions regarding it. Or at least things that people think are unobtainable. Could you please bring back 2 of your original videos, a message for guys and a message for girls? Yeah, I think you asked me about that a few months ago. Sorry, I haven't gone around to it. Yeah, if you've got any other questions, guys, I'm going to keep going for a bit and then I'm going to close up. Give it 5 minutes. I think I said 5 minutes before. I think the major problem with people attracted to PUA is that they approach it like an engineering problem. Yeah, that's definitely true, 100% true. Like, don't approach it like marketplace. Like, who cares about the marketplace? Oh, it's unlisted. Okay, so that's now public. The women one, and now the men one is public. There you go, Sandra. My opinion. Okay, so my opinion regarding the scripture is I think that. Okay, so there are different kinds of people, and different kinds of people can attain different kinds of things, right? For an average person, having maybe not an average person, I think that for a lot of people it's sufficient and I'm saying like the less educated people, I think it's sufficient to have access to the English commentary. So Haydock. I mean, actually, I don't know how far I'd go with that, right? Because a lot of these are expensive, right? Get the Catholic introduction to the Old Testament. I don't know about New Testament commentaries, but there are some. They're incomplete though, Cornelius a Lapide. A lot of his New Testament commentary is translated to English, but I don't know if it was the book I was reading, or the version I was reading, but there was a lot more detail in the Latin that wasn't in the English. Like you can use Lapide, Catena Aurea in English. For an average, just a guy, right? Like if you're like not an educated person. I mean, like if you've got like a bachelor's degree or something. I mean, that kind of sounds sad, doesn't it? If you're just like I don't know if I call you a complete normie, but like if you're somebody who's not a particularly academic person, right? Like reading the scripture a lot every single day and consulting, I don't know, Lapide, Haydock, Brant Petrie, and John Bergsma, just reading the English language materials. That's I don't know if I want to say that's okay because I'm kind of in the dark on this, but one thing I'm pretty convinced of is that every single seriously educated person should be very, very good at Latin. And that's because a lot of the best commentaries are in Latin, at least the ones that I know of. So Cornelius a Lapide, like some of his New Testament stuff is translated into English, Old Testament completely untouched. There's a 18th century commentator called Calmet who Haydock cites. I think he was originally in French, but he's translated into Latin, and I think if I remember the Latin, if I remember correctly, they consulted him when they were translating the Latin as well. You have, and this isn't so good, the Ordinary Gloss, which was the high medieval commentary on the scriptures that St. Thomas Aquinas often refers to, and the Ordinary Gloss, right? They were gloss copies of the scriptures that had like commentaries on them. This is in Latin, with some exceptions. I think Ruth is translated into English. You probably have many others in Latin and untranslated into English. And these things are well worth consulting. And this also extends to other areas of theology as well. So, for example, I have here Ryan Grant's On Divine Tradition. I haven't read this in a very long time. But when I read through it in English, it's almost unintelligible. I was guessing what it meant, and to be honest, like his translation of Cornelius a Lapide is much better. But that was originally in Latin, 19th century Latin. I haven't actually read it, but it might be worth consulting the Latin there. Like you can't access if you don't know Latin, you can't access going on 1,500 years of Western intellectual history, and a lot before that as well. So I'm using like the year 500 as a kind of a cut-off point. But really, you have Seneca and you have the classics. This is post-classical era, like just accessing the medievals and the Renaissance theologians, right? Like you don't have access to those or the biblical commentaries, or even their scientific treatises might be interesting as well. So like. I was reading about comets a few months back in an educational text written in the 17th century. That was kind of interesting. You also have Pliny's Natural History, which is classical, which is interesting as well. You have you're missing out on a huge chunk of the Western tradition by not knowing Latin, and every single person is capable of learning a language. It's just finding the time and grunting down and actually doing it. I mean, like I'm considering doing stuff. Actually, I won't say anything just yet. So that would be everyone. I think everyone should know Latin, and I think that a significant proportion of people, if they want to get really deep into the scripture, should also know ancient Greek and Hebrew too. And if you're an academic, then you can throw on like Coptic or you can throw on Coptic and Syriac and the other languages. I met my GF bouldering climbing, and she approached me because I have no ability sense choosing signals. Got the tism. Well, if it is the intention to learn more about what the Bible says, then get a Catholic Bible concordance and go through that. Incredibly helpful. The thing with concordances is they don't immediately provide the informative commentary that you'll get from you say Lapide. Lapide is wonderful. He'll go for like Like he's gone for like a very long time on one proverb, and it's really interesting because he intersperses all these quotes and all this history about classical civilization, about saints, and it makes the whole thing, it's very passionate, right? Like it's not like a lot of at least the Jerome biblical commentary, which is a little weird. I've heard some people call him a heretic, and the guy that wrote one of the guys associated with Jerome, and I think I've heard as much that he is from Hassan, but it's very dry, and so it's like a lot of quibbling about sources and a lot of like commentary that I don't think is very good. Lapidae is wonderful. Lapidae will simultaneously go through the grammar of the Hebrew to argue for a certain translation, and then later on he will insert nice snippets like this is a good argument against the Jews, or in here is proved that this explains why the Benedictines got so rich by their breviaries, whereas those with swords did not. Right, like it's wonderful. And I think a lot of the 17th century literature, like the exposure I've gotten to it so far, it suggests it was a very, very different world in the sense that they held the classics in a regard that cannot even be imagined today. Right, like extremely high regard. And they also have these weird introductory bits where they dedicate their books to their patrons, which are a bit weird. I despise PUA. They encourage terrible behaviours. This is a genuine issue I foresee in just not being enough virtuous women. Yeah, I mean, like the thing with women is that I kind of understand more now, because I know more women because of having gotten married. I kind of feel sorry for them in a way because like it's not like the women are perfect, of course. I don't think I need to tell you guys that, but they aren't dealing with a very good pool of men themselves. Like we're all in a bit of a terrible position. Oh, coding, language, modeling, so on. Okay. Your channel will help me in my conversion. Thanks. I'm glad that I could help. If you ask me enough times, eventually I will give in and learn Latin. Learn Latin. Learn Latin. I mean, your name is literally Latin. Yeah, Raymond Brown is the one I'm referring to. Dudes would rather complain online about birth rates and actually get married and raise birth rates. Well, there's always that fear around getting married because you have to trust the woman, and you can they'll say that over half of all marriages end in divorce, but they forget that those where the women and the men pray together, the ones that broke up, is like 1/3%. And it's hard, right? It's not an easy thing to be involved in. But it is the ordinary means by which we're saved. The statements people make about women from a Christian perspective are surreal. They sound like incels. I don't know what you mean by that. Like women aren't perfect, but it's like try to think of it from the woman's perspective, right? You're in a situation where you carry around a baby for 9 months and you have to look after them for 18 years, and the people that you have to choose from that would stick by you are either terrified to talk to you. 90% of them are addicted to pornography. Some of them are psychopaths. Some of them are really influenced by this PUA stuff. Think of that from a woman's perspective. Like a woman, like women by and large just want to be loved, right? And if you're going to deny them that doesn't mean that you should love every woman, right? That's a really bad idea. Or just any woman. That's a really, really bad idea too, because there are evil women, right? But, it doesn't make life easy. Granted, it's probably been that way a lot more than people are willing to admit for a while. They sound like incels, they're so positive. What about women? I mean, I remember one of these guys, I can't remember his name. He did this study and he asked 200 women what they want out of a husband. And it's like, well, I mean, a lot of women don't even want to have children, right? And then they do. So why would you ask a woman her opinion on what she wants in a man, right? You just become a good man, and that attracts the right kind of woman, regardless of what she consciously thinks. People don't speak about the issue of divorced dads remarrying and refusing to have kids with a childless woman who wants kids is actually prevalent. I had no idea. Your mic picks up every swig of water. Well, pick up a drink with me. When are we going to read the classics? Have you any thoughts on Tom's Digest? If you know who that is. I've heard of Tom's Digest, never read it. When are you going to read the classics? I read like the first book of Caesar last year. And I haven't touched. I've barely touched the classics since. Like I read like 4 lines of Seneca. My classical erudition is non-existent. I've spent most of my time. So the predominant things I've done with Latin are read the Vulgate. I listen to a hell of a lot of the podcasts that people do. I've done a few. I did Imitation of Christ audiobook once, and lots of readers. And Cornelius and Apode, Calme, like little bits of authors here and there. I'm thinking I'm going to really soldier through Cornelius on Proverbs actually next. I don't know when I'm going to read the classics is the answer. Christians' takes on women are very generous. Yeah, I mean, women. A lot of women are evil, right? Like I said, it's not in a vacuum, right? Like, lots of horrible women. Me and my brother are getting confirmed this Easter. Any advice on picking a patron saint? This problem really bugged me for years, actually. I ended up settling on St. Justin Martyr, but really I was trying to find a saint that fit my personality, and I ended up just picking St. Justin Martyr out of a selection of different ones in the end. And I'm happy with that choice. I don't know, pray about it, probably. Yeah, that's actually true. The Manosphere complains about men losing half of their money, but never mentions women have given that man years or sometimes all of fertility. Yeah, I know my wife knew someone actually who was in a relationship with a man for 10 years, and then I can't remember if he killed himself or if he left her, but she was like in her early 30s with nothing to do. That's a really horrible situation for a woman to be in. Thoughts on wealth-seeking women? Well, we're supposed to not toil for riches, right? We're only supposed to toil for what we have on Earth. I think it's really stupid. But I think it's really stupid if a man does that too. I mean, can you imagine being at the end of your life being surrounded by the things you bought and then you don't know who's going to actually end up with those things? You can write your will and you can give it to your children, but there's no guarantee they're going to hold on to it. Manosphere, oh yeah, I've read that one. In the past, fathers and brothers would have a say in which man a woman would end up with and chase away those undesirable. Grandmothers would play the matchmaker. All that is lost. Yeah, like matchmaking stuff is matchmaking. I think is a really good thing. I think that should come back. But you need community for that. So yeah. I think people don't ask who to pick enough. I mean, it wasn't even an Ecclesiastes moment. That's like toiling after that's actually Proverbs. Proverbs explicitly says don't toil to enrich yourself, and Sirach says something similar, right? He says there is I'm trying to remember how it goes. There is a man who toils and denies himself, so that he can enrich himself, and then he finally gets his things. And he says, now I have time to enjoy them, but then he doesn't know when he's going to die. I mean, that's a loose paraphrase, but that's what it says. Yeah. You mentioned you might print a Douay-Rheims Bible. I can't remember, I might have mentioned it. I was thinking of printing a Clementine though. I was thinking of printing the 6-day Clementine Vulgate because that's really hard to get a hold of. Like I mean, I had the whole business of I can't remember. I think it was just for Venturus ad Noctem actually, where I was producing readers' editions of different Latin texts, and I released a good chunk of the Vulgate edited. I might do that. I don't know if just yet. Like I've got another project in the works at the moment. Got to be really careful with women, guys. Domestic abuse, violence, and gender-based killing is another topic men don't typically think about. Is the state of men worse than the state of women? I don't know. I mean, there was a house theologian of Benedict XVI. Actually, this wasn't from Wikipedia. I'm not going to cite it to you. I think they're different, right? Because men are addicted. I mean, men and women are both addicted to porn. Men more so than women, but still, it impacts them. Women, a lot of them. I mean, the reason I didn't like a lot of women. There's a lot of very arrogant women out there, and that's very annoying. Yeah, I wouldn't like to say. I think Dyer is right. It's totally women. Dyer's completely wrong. Like, look outside Dyer. I mean, like Dyer has problems theologically, but this is a problem of like basic common sense. Like, go out. Like, has Jay not been outside? Like half of men can't even talk to women properly. And 90% of them are addicted to porn, right? That's a real problem, guys. That's a really serious problem. That that's like, like looking upon a woman like that. Like how do you think that makes women feel? First of all, and second of all, like how do you think a woman is going to think about you taking venereal pleasure in another woman in a relationship with her? Right? Like I think some women cope about it, but it's wrong. Yeah, women do bear a lot of the blame. Yeah, there's a lot of arrogant women out there. There's a lot of porn addicted women too, right? And they're all puffed up, and you see them about, right? Like some of them just need a very stern talking to. Like I mean, if Dyer's genuinely saying Dyer genuinely says that, I mean like he's lost all credibility. I mean as if he hadn't already. Did you see Riverrun testing the Holy Fire? Yeah, like the whole thing with this Holy Fire thing is I think there's a little bit more to it than like people like Christian and that are kind of taking it, because there's actually a review article on it, right? And I've heard stuff to the extent that there's strange things that go on inside of the sepulchre when the light comes about, right? There was something to do with electromagnetism and the temperature of the fire originally starting at around body temperature, and then over the course of half an hour, raising to the temperature of actual fire. So, in that case, if it weren't in a war zone, I'd like to go to Israel, and if Christian would pay for my tickets, I would fully go down to the tomb. I would fully take the light, and if I burn myself, then that's fine. I think there's, I'm fine with it. I think there's more to it. I'll put it that way. He says it's women, and the problem with women came from the state. I'm not aware of a field that disagrees aside from ones paid to do so. I don't know what this is in reference to. Well, I mean, if the state is run by men, then, you could say men caused it as well, right? Well, okay, honestly, eliminating people when dating who are not personally and ethically compatible is a must. Yeah, I mean, like, never ever marry a wicked person, like, never ever marry, particularly an angry woman, right? You will really regret it. I hope my internet's not popping out. Anyway, if you guys can actually hear me, I'm reading about Bishop Shalom who edited it. Oh yeah, the Duai, yeah, we edited it to be more in line with the KJV as far as I understand. Yeah. So anyway, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. I've got to go to bed. So unless anybody's got any other questions, I'm going to. Oh, how much? What did you miss? I saw my connection for some reason is going a bit weird. I don't know quite why, but it is. So I don't know what you guys missed. Oh bloody hell! My financial situation is in the toilet, and I don't foresee improving anytime soon. So I'll probably die married and childless. Don't think that follows, mate. Yeah, anyway, I think I'm going to close it off. I'm going to go to bed now. Yeah, so, if you've got any other questions, like, actually comment it under the stream, and then I can just respond as if it were a regular comment. Hope everyone's having a good day, and thank you all for watching. Please share it with with people who you think that it's going to be relevant to, because I think it's relevant to a hell of a lot of people. Take care.